All right. Welcome back, everybody, to another video in the series of COE training. The purpose of today's video is going to be flipping gears from our portal training, now looking at the Dynamics backend. So this is what we call the staff view of information that gets entered in on the portal and how a staff member from Special Olympics will manage that data in a variety of different ways. The focus of this specific backend training will be primarily just about contact information. So information relating to our athletes, to our coaches, unified partners, and volunteers, as well as our parents and guardians that are coming into the system. So we've broken out this backend training into a couple different areas, specifically around functionalities that our staff need to do for accessing the different areas. Now, our first step for accessing the portal, or pardon me, the Dynamics backend is accessing either one or two links. So for the purpose of today, I'll be accessing our UAT environment, so our sandbox testing environment. But depending on where you are in the onboarding process, you may be using the live production Dynamics application. I'll include both of the links to the backend in the description of this video. So if you don't have them, you can access them there or via the SharePoint site on our website. So without any further rambling, I'm going to jump into my next set of rambling and start our training. So right now we are looking at our home page of the Dynamics application. We'll see a lot of information in our face already. To make a note here, what you're seeing on your view might look a little bit different than what I have open right now. Don't worry that you're not seeing exactly what you're seeing on your screen on the video. We're going to cover exactly why that happens. We first need to dive into an important step when accessing Dynamics, and that is setting our personalization settings. Our personalization settings will create our different views here of what we see when we click home. It'll also indicate how much data we see all at one time. And most importantly, we'll have the ability to set our time zone that is relevant to however we use Dynamics. This will come in great importance in a variety of different areas of the backend. So the first step that we do when logging in is going to our settings up at the right-hand corner with our little cogwheel icon, clicking that, and then underneath the More Settings section, we'll go to Personalization Settings. Clicking this should, so long as it loads, open up a pop-up box for us to indicate some personalization setting. Maybe. Give it an old college refresh. There we go. So under our general settings, this is going to be pretty much all of the information that we're going to be updating. So whenever you first log in, you can ignore all of these other tabs. A lot of this will be set by the COE team for you. So only the information under general will be relevant out of the box. Where we see default pane, this will default to whatever area that you're using. Right now, what the focus of this training is solely on contacts. So if you're somebody at your Special Olympics program that deals a lot with individual athletes or individual volunteers, the contacts area might be the best default tab to have set. Same thing here under the default tab. This will indicate what section of whatever default pane you set here, whatever area you have selected here will also be your home button. So say I work a lot with contacts, or I'm somebody at my organization who reviews a lot of forms. I'm the person going through health history forms or background checks. I might want to set related forms or related health forms as my default. Some of these different designations will make a lot more sense as we explain them, So you can always go back and set whatever relevant tab you want later on. Big recommendation I have is for the records per page selection. I put it 250, which is the maximum amount you can have. This way you have more information at your disposal, before having to click to the next page. I think it defaults to like 25 or 50, and that's just not enough data to look at all at once, in my opinion. So I suggest setting it to 250 to give everything a little bit more information. The default find, I like to use the detailed. This gives me a little bit more information if I'm searching for something in the system. The simple view is great. It's very nice and clean, but might not give you all the information if you're searching for, a specific John Smith in the system. There's a lot of John Smiths out there. So being able to find more detailed information on the John Smith is really helpful. Now, I'm not going to do too much editing to this video, but if I were to add like a red alert sound, I would make sure that this happens now for the time zone setting in personalization setting. This is a really important setting to make sure that you have set to whatever time zone you're in, because this will impact things like events. So if you create an event and it's set to Eastern time, but you live in Pacific, your times are going to be way off on the portal, and people are going to be very confused at when they need to be there versus not be there. So under time zone, make sure you select whatever one that you are in. I happen to be in Central, so I'm going to keep that. The rest of this might come in handy later on in the future, especially with some of the fundraising and engagement stuff that we'll be building into the COE at a later date. But for now, really, this area here for the defaults, records per page, time zone, and the advanced find are the most important fields that you need to update. Once you've updated everything that you want to have as your personalization settings, click OK to save those changes. Your screen, like mine, will refresh if you've made changes to it. And now those defaults are saved whenever you click Home. I mentioned, excuse my ping. If you're playing the game, that's another ping on another video that you are seeing. You know what? Why don't I just do this so I don't get any more Teams pings. Okay. Anyway, I mentioned at the beginning of this video that the focus of this will be on our contacts area. So down here in our bottom left, we see this option bar here for contacts, and depending on whatever you set your default in, maybe events or configuration. Whatever your default is will be determined what area you get when you click Home. But for the focus of this training, we're going to be solely in the contacts area. So make sure if you're following along with this guide, make sure that you're selected into the contacts area. Next, we're going to go through our left-hand sitemap. This is our left-hand bar here, where we see home, recent, and all of this other information. So we're just going to very quickly go through what each of these mean and what they do. We'll see these in a variety of different areas, and I may soft cover some of them and get more in depth as we go into an individual contact. But most of this information we can access in other areas of Dynamics. Start off with our home button. Actually, let's start off with our sitemap bar here. This may come collapsed out of the box for you, but I like to call this our little burger icon. If we click this, it'll expand our options, or if we want to see less of it, we can click that as well. I didn't mute all of my Teams messages, I apologize. If we click burger, it'll expand them, and then we can click through each one. So our home button will bring us back to whatever default that we set in our personalization settings. So in my case, I've got contacts set as my default, and it's bringing me to my contacts page here. Under our recent tab, this will indicate all the last 10 recent areas that you've been in Dynamics. So in my case, I was last in my contacts. I was also in Molly Weasley's account, etc., etc. Now, as I'm hovering over these, you'll see this little pin icon. If I'm using a lot of these different areas quite a bit, we can actually pin these different selections here. So say I use Molly Weasley's account quite a bit, and I want to make sure I have that pinned. So the next time I go to it, I don't have to search for Molly and find her manual. We can find those pinned selections under our pins section here. We can see Molly's here and Ronald in active related forms. And all I have to do is click into each one to get to that specific area that I've pinned. Moving on to our Workplace tab, we've got our dashboard functionality. We'll cover reports and dashboards in a later training. But this is where you'll be able to access them. And out of the box comes a couple different dashboards for contact, so giving a visualization of the information that we already have in Dynamics. Here we can see the contact pipeline from prospect all the way to active, the gender breakdowns of our contacts, and then how many of those athletes that we have in the system are minors versus not minors. We can see information based off of the sports that are most popular, any goals that we have set as far as race and ethnicity. And our drop down here under Contact Dashboard, we can see all the dashboards that I've set up myself. These may not be here for you, but the system dashboard we also have is Profile Dashboard. So again, this gives you visual information about the contacts that are in the system. Like I mentioned, we'll get into specific reports and dashboard guides later on, but here is where you'll be able to access them. Our Contacts tab, I've set this as my home, but this is where we'll be able to find all of our constituents in the system. I'm going to come back to this area because this is where we're going to spend a bulk majority of our training today on. So I'm going to skip right over this. Under Accounts, depending on your program's configuration, you may not have any accounts set up. But here's where we'll be able to find our Microsofts, our organizations, schools, places of work that people may be associated to. So we can see some examples here of Microsoft, Walmart, Ingram High School, and other. But this is where we can find them as well. And we'll see another place to find this information on individual contacts. Under Related Contacts, this is where we can find every type of relationship between one user and another user. So we can see that Molly Weasley is the coach of Frank Weasley, but this is a large list of all potential relationships between one contact and another. Like I said, we'll cover related contacts at the contact view, so I'm not going to dive too deep into this right now, but this is one area that we can find this information. Very similar, this is where we can find all of our groups. So our group type of team or volunteer. This is where we'll find any type of volunteer team or any type of coach competition team are all contained within groups. We'll also be able to see this information on an individual contact here in just a few moments. Continuing on the same theme of containing all information, this is our Related Forms and Related Health Forms tabs, where every type of form or checklist item will be housed. So for active related forms, these are things like background checks, concussion awareness, signature forms, whatever it may be that is not a health form, so not the health history form. We contain that in the Related Health Forms section. And the reason for the separation is one, to keep health history form different, but also from a security standpoint. Not every staff member will be able to look at health information on an athlete and add information. So we lock that down to a different security level within Dynamics. Email messages. This again is where we can see a list of all emails that have been sent out by the system. As a reminder, anytime somebody does something on the portal, they most likely get an email associated with it. So if we needed to find a specific email, we could find it here. But I'll show that information here when we get into a contact. Under our reports, we'll cover this specifically in the reports and dashboards section of our training. So we'll come back to that in a later video. Okay, let's navigate to our contacts area under workplace on our left-hand side sitemap. The first thing we'll see is potentially nothing. Whenever we first log into Dynamics, you are most likely seeing the list view of my active contacts. I happen to have some contacts that are assigned to me, but you logging in for the first time most likely won't see anything. Under our little drop down here where it says My Active Contacts or All Contacts, we click our little caret button and we've got a whole giant list of potential lists that we can look at. Active contacts, all of our athletes, all contacts, volunteers, people who have made accounts in the last year. Really much anything out of the box you'll be able to view here. We'll cover how to create our own lists later on in the training, in the reports and dashboards section, but we can signify those by a little silhouette icon right here. But one recommendation I suggest is whenever we're first logging in, we default to whatever information we most use. So if we're working with athletes primarily, we can set it to all athletes, unified partners, volunteers, etc. For this training, I'm just going to go back. Actually, I'm going to show something real quick. Say we wanted to use all unified partners. And this is, we work with unified partners on a daily basis. And whenever I log into Dynamics, I only want to see unified partners. I can actually set this as my default as well. So I click back down on this drop down. And at the bottom here of our list view menu, we see the option of set as default. I can set this as my default so that next time I click out of it and I come back to contacts, that list of all unified partners will be set. So I would recommend setting this to whatever you'd like. For purposes of our training today, I'm going to go in and go ahead and set my default to all contacts. That way I can find everybody in the system. That means all contacts references athletes, unified partners, coaches, volunteers, circle of care, you name it, they're in all contacts. So this covers how to access different views within the system. Before we click into an individual contact, let's go through our top navigation bar. So right now we've covered our sitemap. Now let's cover our top sitemap. First option we have here is our back button. This, just like on our browser on our computer, will take us back and back and back all the way to the first screen that we came in when we logged into the system. Our second option here is Show As. I've got a couple different options for editable grid, which will open up a editable version of information. We can move around columns if we need to. Be very careful with this. Depending on your permissions at the program, you might be able to edit some of this information. So be careful about updating information that you don't mean to. So for my recommendation, we actually stay away from the editable view. What's really nice is the focused view that we're looking at now, where we can still see a full listing of all of the accounts. But as we click into them, it'll bring up their contact record and we can start managing. Pretty much on any area of the system, we can create a focused view. Say you're responsible for approving med forms and you're doing 100 of them a day. Clicking in every single individual one is pretty painstaking process. So from the approval standpoint, you can use the focus view and just click into one, approve it, so on and so forth. And our last one is our default, which is our read-only grid, which is our traditional way of displaying information. It looks a lot like an Excel file where we can move around the columns, etc., as we need to. Our third option is show chart, where we can display this information. This looks a lot similar to what we saw on the dashboard, but just visualizes whatever data for the list view that we're looking at. So in our sense, we're looking at all contacts. Here we can see all of the contacts and their pipeline from becoming a prospect all the way to active. To remove this chart, all we do is click Hide Chart, and I'll get rid of it. We've got our New button, which will create a new contact. I'll cover this in just a few moments as far as how we actually create a brand new contact. We've also got Edit, so if we're clicked into a specific contact, we can edit that as well. Delete, this option is only there for me, so just ignore that entirely. Refresh will do exactly like it says, refresh the page that we're looking at. Email a link. If we selected a couple individuals, we can email them a link, and it'll open up our Outlook to email them information. These two, pardon me, aren't really necessarily useful right now. We'll cover these later on in reports and dashboards. Same thing for Excel templates. This is where we could put things like name tag templates and export those to a printer and print out name tags based off of the information that we have here. We'll cover that in a later training as well. All of this information that we have in here, we can export to Excel by clicking this button. I'm not going to because it's going to export over 5,000 records, and I don't want to do that right now. But alternatively, we can click our little drop-down caret here next to Export Excel. We can actually open this up in Excel Online, which essentially is the same functionality. Creates an Excel document online that we can download to an Excel file if we choose to, but very similar. It's trying to generate a lot of different records for me, so it's going to take forever to load, so I'm not going to worry about it. Import to Excel. We'll cover this in the engagement training as far as importing events into the system. So we're not going to worry about that for the purposes of today. Okay, pause here, take a drink, and quit rambling for a little bit. Encourage you to drink plenty of water. These are really dangerous trainings for me because I just kind of talk to myself in my office and no idea if anybody's actually watching or not. So if you are watching, leave a comment on this video. Tell me, hey, probably I'll never see it, but okay, moving on. Anyway, we're gonna take a step back and look at creating a new contact. So creating a new contact is pretty simple. Click the plus new button, enter in the required information. Really, the required information is first name, last name, gender identity. You might see this in a couple different areas in Dynamics, but Dynamics is integrated with Microsoft Copilot, so it might create some suggestions for you based off of data that you've previously entered. You can ignore it or click the checkbox, say, yeah, that's what I want. Enter in birth dates, all of that. Email if they have one. So on and so forth. Indicate a program, a registration role, all of that. I'm not going to go through all of this information right now, but kind of big call out is if a user is struggling to create a portal account for the first time, we can kind of help them through the process by entering in some of their information here and then inviting them to the portal up here after we've completed their information. What the invite to portal process does is sends a link to whatever email we have on file for them, inviting them to finish the steps of creating the account. Depending on what information we collect, they'll still need to go through confirming that, yes, this is my name, this is my email, or not email, this is my address, t-shirt size, all of that information. So there still will be a need for some confirmation of information, regardless of if we create the account manually on the back. I'm gonna back out of this because we're actually just gonna look at an account that we've already created. So I'm gonna hop into Molly Weasley. We've been using her for a handful of guides now. So on our first contact page here, we can see some information about who she is, what she's entered in on the portal, address, emergency contacts. Underneath our contact information, we'll see person type. If you've been paying attention to this video series, you'll see that person type controls what access they have to Portal Zone. So right now we can see that Molly Weasley is a coach, a volunteer, and also an admin. So she has access to the volunteer zone, the coach zone, and also has the functionality of managing participants in the coach zone. If we needed to add additional zone access to Molly, we click our little drop down here and then select the ones that apply. So there, Circle of Care member. Now they'll have access to every zone on the portal. Anytime we add information on a contact or anywhere in Dynamics, got to make sure we save. So up here, when we click in a contact or an engagement or a related form, we'll see two new options of save or save and close. The two kind of do what they say they do. Is if we click save, it will save our information and keep us on this screen. While save and close will save and take us back to whatever page we were most recently on. An additional call out here is on our timeline. We can have visualization into any email that has been sent to Molly Weasley since the moment that she created her portal account, all the way to seeing a registration for an event, or she has completed a form or a qualification for a role that she's applied to. Most of this information we can change here. So, Molly put the wrong name in on the portal and we need to update her first name. We can update that information. We'll see places where we can't change information later on, so keep that in mind. Our next tab here is demographic information. So this will just be information that they indicated when creating their portal account. And we can update this if we need to as well from a staff perspective. Regions and sports, same thing. We can update this information if we need to. Say we need to add a new related region. We can click add related region, type a region, or use our magnifying glass here. And it'll populate a list here for us to select from if we're not sure what region they're part of. Save and close. Now Allegheny has now been added to her related regions level. Same thing, we need to remove a region. We'll select the checkbox here, click our little, I like to call this our snake, or our three little dots, and then click deactivate. And this will remove that region from Molly's profile. My Dynamics is going a little bit slow. So it didn't update right away, but it'll remove that from the list, and you'll only be seeing Allegheny now. Related sports, this will have to do with competition registration and the sports that they're associated with. Really, it doesn't have much functionality currently within Dynamics or in the portal. So you may use it or may not use it, but very similar process. We add create new, find whatever sport that they participate in, and add it to their profile. Under roles and qualifications, this is where we'll be able to see any role that this individual has registered for, as well as the qualifications that are associated with that role. So this individual, Molly, has applied to be an athlete, and their athlete qualification is pending. This tells us that there is something outstanding that the athlete or the user needs to complete. But here we can also see certification date when they completed it and any expiration dates that are associated with them. Very similar functionality to what we just saw on the previous screen. If we needed to add a new role, we can do that here. Use our little icon here. And I'm going to find Unified Partner. Mine's going to look a little bit different just because I have access to so many other programs. And then click Save and Close to add a new one. Just a quick tip for those of you who will be doing a lot of these and adding multiple roles or adding multiple anything. This little drop-down caret that we see next to Save and Close, if we click that, it'll say Save and Create New. This will add that role or whatever piece of data we're adding to somebody's profile, and then reopen this same box where we can continue to add them. So saves us a couple trips and a couple steps from adding multiple things to a profile. But here we can see Unified Partner is pending. Don't think there's another qualification associated with it. Oh, I lied, there is. And now Unified Partner is shown as pending. Now, if we click into this specific qualification title, here we're able to see all of the different task list items or checklist items that are needed to be completed. We can see that they're not applicable for FBI fingerprints, so it's not going to show up on their profile on their portal page, but it is technically part of the Unified Partner qualifications. And then we can see the status of each of those. So it looks like for Molly Weasley's Unified Partner registration, she has got everything except for health information and health information. That is all she needs. Where we see active means that it's an active thing on her checklist. And where we want to be is completed. So where we see completed means that Molly has done it either on the portal or because that specific item is related to another qualification for another role. So general orientation has a lot of crossover across a lot of different roles. A coach needs general orientation. Another Class A role needs general orientation. All she has to do is do it once. She doesn't have to do it multiple times just because the role is different. Let's go back. Other qualifications, this is where those skills are housed. So if this user added ASL or said that they're skilled in data management, this is where we could see those other qualifications. Again, a user may never actually add any, and if we wanted to, we could add them for them, but really doesn't do too much other than a reporting standpoint of finding potential people with those skills. Under our Related Forms tab, this is where we'll be able to find those individual checklist items at the form level. So I mentioned earlier, we're missing a health information form for Molly Weasley for the Unified Partner role. Here's where we can find that health form on her profile. and looks like Molly is just absolutely knocking it out of the park, and all of her forms, with the exception of health information, has been marked as approved. And here we can see when she completed them, when they were signed, and any applicable expiration date with the form itself. If we needed to, we can click into the form and see more information. A big call out here is with our background check. If we wanted to look for more specific information about the background check, we can do that here. Go into the related background check and find out additional information about it. Oops, I clicked on the wrong area. Click into this, we can find the Sterling result and access their URL if we needed to send it directly to them. Restrictions, if that's applicable for your program. Report URL, click on that, and it'll take you to Sterling to see the results of their report. Save and close to get back to where we were. I mentioned this earlier, but there are two different designations and kind of groupings of forms. Got our related forms and related health forms. Related health forms is just the health history form, and then related forms is everything else pretty much. So we're going to pause here and kind of take a second to go through the process of a form has come in and what we need to do for approving that form. So we'll take the health history form as an example. Molly Weasley has submitted a health history and release form. Doesn't mean it's a good form, doesn't mean it's a bad form, just mean that there is a form that they have submitted for us as a staff member to review. When we click into the form, if there are documents associated with it, here's where we'll be able to see the document. This will come into play for things like signature forms that have been manually signed. If we need to check if they've actually uploaded the correct form and not a picture of their dog, this is where we'll be able to access the document. This may look different and the tab might be different depending on what type of form you're looking at. I'll show a good example of this in our release of liability class A. Documents may also be listed right here. But additionally, if we click on our related tab, we can see them here as well. Go back to our health history and release. Here we'll be able to see any information that they've entered in, health history, all the questions that they answered. If they completed this form through Adobe eSign, this is where we'll be able to find their URL for it. We click this. It'll tell us if the document has been signed. Go back this. And their Adobe agreement ID, and we can see when it was last signed. If we want us to go in and look at a specific document, we can do that here, and it'll open up the Adobe document specific to Molly Weasley, and we'll be able to verify that signature. This is an important step for a manual signed, opening it up, double checking that they've signed the document. So for the approval process, so right now, form has come in as submitted. This is our first step, an indicator from a staff perspective that there needs to be some level of viewing into this document. To move any document onto that next level, up in our right-hand corner where we see submitted and our drop-down caret, when we click that, we'll be able to indicate either one of two things, either submitted, which it came in right now, and then we can move it to under review. Under review is the first step and an important kind of in between for a form. We have this built in because we don't want forms going from submitted to approved without some level of view and review by a staff member. So once it's under review and we have saved the document, we'll have additional options of approved, missing information, or putting on hold. Approved means the document is good to go. The signature form looks good. We are set to approve this document. Missing information, on the other hand, will indicate to us that we're missing some sort of information. A good case of this would be we're missing a signature form or a signature line for a parent or guardian or something like that. And what this will do is generate a draft email document that we can manually send to the user indicating what information is missing. Our last identifier here is on hold. May or may not ever use that. My Teams just crashed, apologies. May never actually use this status reason, but on hold can be an internal purpose of we need to review this document internally, but don't want to necessarily put it into approved or rejected. Speaking of rejected, rejecting a form is housed in a different area within Dynamics. We see this up here in our top sitemap bar called Deactivate. And to deactivate the form, we click Deactivate, and it'll automatically be set to rejected, and then we can also set it to abandon if we need to. So if we wanted to reject this form, we would select Rejected, and then click Deactivate. Oh no, we can't do it. Why is that? For any form that we want to reject, we need to give it a reason for that rejection. There needs to be some level of acknowledgement and paper trail of why we're rejecting a specific form. So to do that, we'll do that in the admin tab on the form itself. And then under review notes here, we'll enter in the reason for it. Rejected. And they uploaded a picture of their cat. Click Save. Now we can go through that process of rejecting the document. Very similar to approved. This will create a automatically sent email to the user telling them that this form has been rejected for whatever reason, and that they will need to go in and resubmit a new document if that is what is needed. I'm not going to reject this one because I like this one, because that is a good one. We do have a signature form here. They have signed it. So we're good to just go ahead and put this into approved. Depending on the form, like me, I'm missing some information here. So I do just need to indicate yes. But if there are something that is missing, as we just saw, the system will tell you, hey, you missed some section to update before saving and continuing. 9 times out of 10, that is a field that a staff member needs to do and wouldn't be missing information from the user side of things. But once we're good, click Save and Continue. Save and close, pardon me, to move out of it. Excuse me, I need to take a drink here. Okay. This pretty much covers kind of the review process of seeing a form that is in submitted status and then updating it to eventually approved status or rejecting the form entirely. Another option that we have here is similar to the other areas of just adding a brand new form. To do that, we click Add New Form, and then our top right bar where we see our status reason, we'll type in a form type. I'm not sure exactly what form I want to use, so I'm going to go find Clinical Director Approval as an example. So this form does need to exist in the system somewhere. So as long as it exists in our configuration area, we can add that. to our account. I'm going to find this one, click save. By doing this, this will add that form to the user's portal. I do want to make a big call out here is by adding an individual form, that's great if we want it to be displayed on their portal page. But if that form is dependent on their qualification and them being approved as a specific role, this form won't be necessarily tied to that. That's just kind of existing out in limbo. Great they completed, or great they didn't. It has no relevance on them being active as an athlete or a coach. So if we wanted to do that, we would need to do that from the roles and qualification tab by adding the coach role or adding the athlete role, etc., which will create these forms for you automatically. Moving on to our related contacts tab. Here we can see a listing of any potential related contact that we have in the system. I have a lot of duplicates on mine because I use Molly Weasley for a lot of different tests and examples for these user guides. So apologies for that. But here we can click into them and see those relationship types. There's two different designations of related contacts within Dynamics. A related contact can either be a managed contact, or an assigned contact. And the two differentiations between that is a managed contact is somebody that the contact that we're looking at right now manages. So in Molly Weasley's case, Molly Weasley is the parent or guardian to Ginny Weasley. She owns that relationship. She is the top of that pyramid or food chain or however you want to think about it. But she is the one that is managing Ginny Weasley. On the inverse, for an assigned contact, that would mean that Molly Weasley is assigned to somebody else. So I don't know who Molly Weasley's mom would be, but if I were Mac Dugan, the parent or guardian of Molly Weasley would be assigned to Mac Dugan. To create a new related contact, same thing, click plus new related contact. And then depending on what kind of manage versus assign contact, this is where we set it. So the way I like to think about this is our primary contact is going to be the top of that pyramid or that food chain. So Molly Weasley is the coach of Tyler Childers, or Tyler Childers is the coach of Molly Weasley. So if we think about this, Tyler is managing Molly, and Molly is assigned to Tyler Childers. So if we save and close that, so long as we do it right, Tyler Childers will now appear on our assigned contacts. If at any point you mix up that designation, super easy to move it. Just exit out of these, type whatever name of the contact, switch it around to that. An additional call out here is it'll tell you a little bit. Molly Weasley is the parent or guardian to Ginny Weasley. Under our record history tab, this is just some information about when the contact was created and then who last modified it. So we can see that Mac Dugan was the last person to modify it at 6:30, and it was created on the 21st at noon. Related tags are an internal tagging system that we have in Dynamics for adding additional information to a contact. This can be used for a variety of different ways depending on the needs of your program, but we can add a related contact just to give a little bit of additional context to this individual. One way I like to think about this is, we might not have athlete leader as something that requires, an application for, or doesn't have any checklist items associated with it. We could add athlete leader to Molly Weasley's account and then pull a list of all athlete leaders in the system and give that tag to those specific individuals as needed. But the creation of those related tags is entirely open to you and your program and whatever tags are needed. There's no selection of these specific identified tags to select from. It can be whatever you want. And again, those tags are only for internal purposes. At no point would Molly Weasley see this on her portal page. Moving on, we've got our admin tab. So here we see a text box for staff notes where we can add any internal notes that we want to track on Molly Weasley. This is an open text box field, but you might use this for a variety of different reasons. Says nonverbal or needs chaperone. Whatever you end up using this for is entirely open to you and your needs at the program. Anniversary date will indicate the year that they began participation with us. This comes into play primarily on the volunteer zone. I think we use this as an example on the portal guide, but say you've got a longtime volunteer who's been volunteering for 30 years and they log into the portal for the first time and it says 0 years, and they're saying, well, I've been here for 30 years. Why does it say 0? You can just update it here in the anniversary date and say that they've been volunteering since, fun fact to, anybody who's been paying attention to this video or any of the videos, I always use 12/8/95. Happens to be my birthday. Expecting presents if you've watched this far into the video. External system ID is where we will have any GMS ID, VMS, any external system that we're migrated data from. This is where we can find that information. It's not editable. It can't be changed necessarily. And will be come in with data migration. Do not email would be a trigger that a staff member could say if user reaches out and says, they don't want emails anymore coming from the system. By selecting yes, they'll no longer get email correspondence from the portal. For need guardian, this would indicate that they need a guardian to complete documents. So if they're an athlete, completing a health history as an example, if this is yes, they'll have to email that signature form to a parent or guardian before they're able to sign it. For our username section, this is what is generated anytime a user creates a portal account. So very similar to GMS ID, every user in the system has its own unique ID. This is a great way of telling if a individual has confirmed their email and actually created a portal account. This definitely comes into play for the invitations to the portal that we do after data migration, but we can see whether or not they've done that and their username here in this field. Again, this is a locked field, so you at the staff level won't necessarily be able to update this. It can only be done by a COE staff member. Same thing with email confirmed. Tells us yes or no if they've confirmed their email. The inactive reason, very similar to deactivating a form. We can also deactivate an account. This comes into play if we need to ban an athlete or they've passed away and we need to remove their account as part of our data. Just like rejecting a form, we need to have a reason for it. There needs to be some level of paper trail indicating why this athlete is no longer active in the system. That deactivated date will be generated once we deactivate the user. And I'm going to come back to that at the end for how we deactivate an account. Portal invite. This is just information about the invitation to the portal. If we generated that up here in our top Sitemap Bar, this is where we'll find the invitation code and when it was sent. For this timeline, just information about how long it took them to complete the portal process, how long they sat in the initial account creation process, etc. You may never actually look at this, but it is cool and helpful information to give kind of a metric on how long it takes people to register for participation. Under related groups, this is where we'll be able to find any group that a contact is part of. So we can see here that Molly Weasley is part of 2 separate groups, and if we click into it, we can see their role within it and update that as we need to. So, we want to move Molly to only having some visualization into the group. We can move her to a member. We can give her full access as an admin, etc. So this area right here for related groups is the same functionality as groups that we see on our left-hand sitemap. Under our related dropdown, this will give you some additional information that we can look at for things like events that they've registered for. What else? Big thing would be their audit history. This is a really neat kind of tool to use if you're looking for a paper trail of anything that's ever happened to this account on Dynamics or in the portal. If you've ever used something like Google Docs or even online Word where you can track changes, this is essentially tracking changes that have been happening to this specific contact. So up here at the top, we can see that Mac Dugan made updates to these specific fields, updated the anniversary date, added staff notes, etc. So it gives you a change log of anything that's ever happened to this record, all the way from the moment that they created their account on the portal. So if you're ever looking for additional information, you can find that here. We'll go back to our admin tab, and we're going to last talk about deactivating an account. So I mentioned earlier, we need to put a reason for that. So let's say we're going to ban this. We're going to ban Molly because we found out that she's a witch and is using magic to win races. So after we add an active reason, and as always in the system, we save, we can go up here and deactivate this account. By clicking deactivate, we'll have a couple different options here of inactive. We would use inactive for somebody that we've lost contact with or just no longer participating with our Special Olympics program, but we want to have some historical information on file. Or abandoned, they started the process a long time ago, but just never finished their registration. If they have unfortunately passed away, can indicate that as well, lost contact, for the reason that we're going to do for this example of banned. So same thing as what we saw with deactivating a related form. If I hadn't put an inactive reason here, it's not going to let me do that. But since I did, I am able to do that, and now this individual is marked as banned on our status reason. And we can see that here under our drop-down caret for status reason is banned. A big thing, anytime we deactivate a record, I can't edit any of this information here. As hard as I try, I can't type in any more information. So after deactivating a contact, it will lock all information. So the staff member couldn't go back there and edit something long after the fact, would remove access for both the user and for a staff member. If somehow we did this by mistake or the ban period is now up, we can reactivate this account via our top sitemap by clicking activate. And then we can put them into whatever status we need them to be. In our case, they're going from banned to active. click activate. And now we can edit this information again, and they can continue their participation with our Special Olympics program. So that's kind of the long and short of the contacts area. I think this is a good place to stop because we are at an hour for this specific training. I wonder how short these videos would be if I quit rambling, but that's what you got. So I will leave it there. In our next video, we'll come back and focus on the event section and how to navigate building engagements and adding them to the portal. So with that, take care. See you next time.